Greetings gamers! In this video, I'll be teaching you how to do some higher level efficiency trio and 5-man Chambers of Xeric challenge modes that will bring your completion times to consistent 20 to 22 minutes. Now, this is without some of the hyper efficient techs that are used by some of the high level gamers, but I will still touch on some of these techs, and we'll be showing you essentially the Vang's rush meta, which can be done very consistently and quite easily as opposed to some of the other methods. And it still allows your team to make a lot of mistakes, and you can still go very fast. And I'm going to talk about how to optimize it, some changes you can do, gear setups, and how to juggle between having irons and mains. So let's go ahead and get started right away. So first things first, you can look at the table of contents in the description. This is going to give you timestamps to jump around the video later on if you're looking for specific information. So very quickly, in terms of the assumptions, I'm basically assuming you have basic comprehension of challenge mode and Chambers of Xeric. You have at least 25 kill counts under your belt, and you're willing to take your gameplay to another level. Now, remember, you do need some good gear to make this raid go faster, so I'm assuming you have close to max gear and close to max stats, and besides that, let's just go straight to the next subject. So in terms of plugins, I don't want to go into too much detail because I can honestly do a full video on this, but the first things first, CoX Vanguards is very powerful. It's very useful for Vanguards, as you may have guessed, and it color codes all the 3 Vanguards in which style you can attack them and what the HP thresholds are, so that alone is extremely nice, mostly for trios and 5-mans. The next plugin is the Party plugin. Now, if your entire team joins this plugin, you can track defense reductions, so you know exactly how many hammers hits, how many BGSs you should send to lower the defense, you can ping tiles, you can show Venge status, and honestly, it's such a great plugin. It's very similar to Socket from the Cheat Client plugin way back in the day. So the next plugin I want to talk about is the Raid Death Indicator. Essentially, it colors in blue whenever Vespula, Mage Hand, or even Vasa or Mystics are about to die. It basically calculates how much damage each of your attacks do. So for example, if you shoot a T-bow, and it's going to do 40 damage, and Vasa has less than 40 health, well, you know right away it'll die. However, you're not able to know what your friends or teammates are hitting, and this plugin takes that into account and will tell you when the NPC dies by highlighting it blue, so you can right away change gears and move on. The next plugin is the CoX Additions plugin. Now, my favorite part of this plugin is the Thieving one, but there's a lot of other things you can explore, like the Enhance Timer. But the Thieving one basically estimates how many grubs your team has gotten, so you know exactly when to dump and when you can gear for the next room. So in terms of the roles, there are 3 different roles, and players can opt to swap around the roles as seen fit. Now there's more advanced roles that I'm going to talk about later in the gear setup, but for now, the main idea in trios, and this can also apply to 5-mans, everyone but 1 player will rush Vanguards, so in a case of a trio, 2 players will no prep and instantly send Vanguards, and that is what is known as Vang's Rush. And 1 person will stay behind and create potions for the team, which is the prepper, or I call it the prep slave. Now you can do this with Iron Man and mains, but ideally you'd want to have 2 irons in 1 main. That way an iron and a main can no prep together. The iron loots the pots on the floor, the main gets the potions from the chair chest from the other Iron Man that's going to prep for themselves and the main that is no prepping. Now I'm going to show you gear setups right after, but this is essentially the gist of what this method is. So in terms of the gear setups, there are 3 different roles that I want to touch on, and honestly this is extremely customizable, and I'm going to show that later on. But role number 1 is this one right here. It's no prep, surge, with entangle, and chinning or Venibow. Now in trios you want to use Venibow because it's significantly better, and you'll see that later, but in 5-mans or above you should be using chins instead to tank the rangers. Now, you can see there's empty inventory spaces inside the gear setup, and these are for utility items. I'm going to talk about that right after, but for now, put that aside in your mind. Role number 2 is no prepping with Surge, Telegrab, and BGS. This is personally my favorite role just because of how fun Telegrab is. You can see the gear setup right here. Essentially, you have a BGS instead of the Venibow, and the gear setup is the exact same. Your rune pouch is different based on which one you do. You bring either nature runes for the entangle or law runes for the telegrab in role number 2. And I'm going to show that later. There's also other techniques you can utilize, especially with thralls, but that's for later on. The 3rd role is the prep slave. Now this one is Venge with Humidify. It's to facilitate your prepping so you can use Humidify on the empty vials, and also a ZGS. Now you notice in these gear setups I have full oath plate, but it's actually better if you are not BGSing to bring the Torva helm, Torva legs with the oath plate chest. Unfortunately I don't have that, so I'm not able to say that. And also, if you're surging, make sure you have a harm orb. If you don't have the harm orb, it's actually better to bring an Ember Light for Ice Demon, and I'm going to touch on that later as well. So in terms of utility items, there's a lot of different options you can take. So the first things first, the lockpick is one of my favorite ones to bring. It makes thieving more fluid, and you actually save around 9 seconds if your entire team brings a lockpick, which is quite substantial. That assumes 12 chests are pickpocketed. Now the other option is a Surge Potion. Now this is very beneficial because you actually get an extra ZCB on Mystics, and you also get 25 additional percentage of spec at Olm, which is very nice if you want to drop an extra hammer if you have bad RNG. And also, if you have an Ember Light, you'll see why this is useful, because you can actually Ember Light spec Ice Demon and then Search Pod to have a ZCB on Shamans right after. And you should also, if not doing that previous tech I mentioned, Search Pod right after Shamans. That way you get a ZCB quicker for Vanguards. Now, the next item in question is the Bronze Axe, which saves around 4.8 seconds on Ice Demon. Now, notice here how Basiliscus right away is able to chop the tree, and I need to go ahead and pick up the axe before starting to chop the tree. So that is literally the time save between bringing an axe. Personally, I don't bring it because I need the extra brew because I'm not that good at the game, but it's definitely worth bringing if you're trying to push your raids as fast as possible. Now this does segue to the next one, which is the extra brew. I bring an extra brew, I bring 2 brews into the raid if I'm no prepping. That way I get an extra brew for Vanguards in case I make mistakes, which happens sometimes. Now the next item is an Ember Light. It's very good for Ice Demon if you don't have a Harm Orb. Now I would suggest sending an Ember Light spec right off the bat on Ice Demon, and if you hit that 20% defense reduction, makes a big difference on Ice Demon, and you actually shred it super quickly. So it's definitely worth bringing if you don't have a Harm Orb, or if you're not on the regular spellbook. So the next tech is a little bit more advanced. It's the Entangle plus Telegrab. Basically, you can be the only person on the team on standard spellbook, and if you bring Law Runes, Nature Runes, and then Smoke Runes and Mud Runes, you can cast both Telegrab and Entangle. And if you want to have Water Runes for Olm, you can just uncharge your Shadow and recharge it for Chaos Runes to be able to cast Water Strike. Now this is very advanced. I wouldn't recommend this if you're still trying to learn, but if you want to push for a personal record, I would definitely suggest trying this out. Now the last one, which also kind of coincides with the previous one, is if you don't need to be on standard spellbook, you can go on Thralls with Arceus spellbook to have both Death Charge and also the Ember Light for Ice Demon. Now Death Charge is very powerful, you can gain spec a lot faster during the raid, and also Thralls during the entire raid, especially for Olm, is very strong and adds a significant DPS boost. So before we get started, I want to go into potion management, and this is very hard, and there's a lot of different variations you can follow, and it depends on how you're doing your raid. So you can see here, this is the max efficiency where both players are completely no prepping. So player red would loot the red potions, and player blue would loot the blue potions, and the prepper would not prep for anyone in the team. Now this is very advanced, I would not do this if you're learning. I would actually prefer you do a more basic method. Now the basic method is essentially one player loots everything on the floor and they run with the raid, and the second no prepper will have potions in the share chest that is prepped for them from the prepper. And I'm going to discuss this in more detail on the prep section, but for now, don't worry about it. Alright, so now we go into the room examples one at a time. So this is the room layout for Chambers of Xeric challenge modes, you should notice already, and let's just go straight into it. Now let's start off with Tekton. So one person lures, which in this case is me, and you'll see I start the raid on the perfect tick. I run straight to this tile here, and as soon as a tick passes, I run back and I cast Vulnerability. This is optional. Both players will instantly send an Elder Maul twice, and once they send the both Elder Mauls, I'll go ahead and send my BGSs. So the BGS role is the person that will be luring Tekton, and then once that is done, you just scythe it to Narnia. There's not much more to say. If you're on Venge, you should definitely try to tank 1 or 2 Venges, and that's basically it. Once Tekton dies, loot the pots and go straight to crabs for the next room. Alright, so for crabs, there's 3 different methods. I do the regular crab most of the time, but I'll touch on the other ones later. So delay a tick upon entry. One player, in this case Lalo, sets up the range crab to get the purple crystal done as soon as possible. A second player, which in this case is myself, gets the melee crab ready. I usually send an Elder Maul spec, Elder Maul hammer here, so that way it stays still. And that way Lalo can set it up by stalling 1 tick behind and then pushing that red orb towards it. Now these other 2 are very simple. You basically just line them up as so with these tiles. It's not very complicated. Once you get the yellow one done by attacking with Mage, you should be stepping forward to save a few ticks for the black one at the end. And that's basically it. There's not much complexity in this method. I'll show you the other two quickly, but personally I do not do the other two methods. They're very advanced, and I'm always doing pots, so I'm always late. So for 46-second crab, you're basically splashing a crab in order to get the white orb shot as fast as possible without losing a tick. And then the second player sets up by smacking it with a melee weapon, and that literally saves you like 2 ticks. Now it's very advanced, I don't recommend it for everyone, but it's definitely an option to learn. Now the third method here is the 45-second world record crabs, and this is honestly just art to watch. I've seen it happen a few times, but I just got carried. But basically it requires 3 players with perfect coordination, each tagging a crab with a splash and tanking it to get the mage one done as soon as possible. This is honestly beautiful to watch, and I've never actually learned it, and nor do I recommend you to learn it unless you're trying to get an actual world record or something in the future. And yeah. Now let's go straight into Ice Demon. So the first things first, do not lose ticks. Right away, try to get the axe as fast as possible. If you have an axe in your inventory, like in this case Ginny does, you can right away start chopping at the first tree. If not, you should run right next to the axe, drop 3 items, pick up the axe, and then start chopping while you're running towards the tinderbox. Now, essentially what you want to do in trios is you want to get a full inventory of around 25 plus kindling and dump it in the brazier. And afterwards you can do a half inventory and always dump in separate braziers, and this is gonna speed up Ice Demon popping as fast as possible, and that's what you're trying to get because you want Ice Demon to spawn to be able to kill it ASAP. Try your best to deposit items you don't need in between here before Ice Demon spawns. This is gonna open up your inventory to loot pots later on, and then don't forget to loot your potions you dropped on the floor earlier because you definitely need that. Now in terms of Ice Demon fight, Fire Surge Harm is actually the best you can use. If you don't have a harm, I would recommend using the Emberlight. If you don't have either of those, I would recommend Shadow Max Mage is better than T-Bow, but not by much, so I personally prefer the T-Bow just because it's a lot easier to do for Ice Demon. And once Ice Demon dies, go straight to the next room. If you're doing max efficiency Ice Demon, you have to loot the Ice Demon secondaries. Now Shamans isn't that hard, there's only 2 in trios, but 3 in 5-mans, so you want to instantly send a ZCB. I use it on long range just to potentially save a tick and avoid it jumping. And then you just T-Bow it to Narnia. There's not much more to say here. One good tip is to always hug the walls. You want to avoid the shaman jumping. And the AoE tile is basically like a 3x3, so if you move 3 tiles away, you are fine. And it's always nice to avoid overkill DPS if possible. So if the shaman is low health, only one player should T-Bow it while the other players focus on the next one. And that's basically it. Now for the prep room, there's a lot of information here. I'd recommend starting with the Giga Recline method and then slowly working your way up as you get better and more confident. And these are the potions you should make in both the shared and then for yourself. Now please remember, if you don't have 4 planks, this is pretty annoying to do except for the max F trio setup. Now I also put the potions for 5-man prep. I'm not talking much about 5-mans, but this is what I was making when I was doing 5-mans. So basically you can try the chill one and then work your way up to the advanced, or you can even go back down and prep more if you're not confident. Essentially for the prepping, it's very self-explanatory. You should be grabbing your vials, casting Humidify, picking the Buchu as fast as you can, and just don't AFK. There's a way to clean Buchu while picking, and that saves a couple ticks, but personally I just don't bother with that because I really do not care. And as soon as you finish this, you can go straight to Vanguards to help out your team. And obviously your teammates that are no prepping will not be helping you here. They can optionally plant the seed for you if they want to help you out a little bit, but really they should be sending straight away Vanguards and trying to get that room done as fast as possible. This here is an example of a prep when both teammates are no prepping, so this is the max efficiency one. I sped it up a little bit, but basically you prep as little as possible only for yourself, and you try to be as fast as possible at your prepping. And you notice here that since I don't have a chest, I can't really bank all my gear. So the inventory management here is extremely important, and it's very frustrating to do. And you can see I have a very specific technique where I put my restores at this exact location, and then that way I can push my 11 brews at the bottom. So I prep 11-5-1 in this case. I make my pots as I'm running towards the chest, and then I move all my brews on the down side, and you see here I'll go back to normal speed. And then as soon as I get to the chest with my rune pouch at that location, withdraw all, and then start withdrawing the rest of my gear. And you can see that was significantly faster than if I have to do it manually all myself. Now I can definitely speed up here a little bit more by better positioning my gear and my items in the inventory, but there's a lot more to do here, and that's basically it. Alright, so this, in my opinion, is the hardest room of chambers. Now, to start off, one person goes straight to this tile here, and you can see I'm running there right now with Domas. you want to send 2 shadows on the melee as soon as it spawns, which is the red one, and then send 1 ZCB on the major. In this case, I went for the ranger, which is also okay, but make sure your ZCB is on long range, but it's not ideal. And the second person will ZCB on the second rotation. So you have 2 different options. You can either follow your Vanguard, or you can basically hug a corner and stay there. I like following a Vanguard. I typically follow the range Vanguard, and then afterwards basically try to send a T-bow on the mage Vanguard as soon as it's in between of the rotation. And you can actually trade less damage taken, because the mage Vanguard is actually the one that slaps the most. So you see here, there's a safe spot right here for the melee, and there's 4 different scenarios. Honestly, I can do a full video on Vanguards, and I'm not the best one to explain this because my knowledge on Vanguards is not the best. And you see here, I start maging, hitting the major because I reduce the damage taken, because you basically are able to send a T-bow as soon as it digs, and you can reduce the number of damage taken from the major. And try to follow the Vanguard's health until they all die. It's a really shit room, you gotta be very cautious, be careful, make sure you brew up, and that's why I bring an extra brew for this room alone. So Thieving is like honestly the easiest room, there's not much to say here. You should be basically getting your 10 grubs and then dumping as fast as possible to get the start timer ticking. And your team should try to get around 65 to 75 grubs in trios. Essentially, you're trying to overkill the NPC, so that way it drains faster and you save a little bit of time. There's some specific tiles you can see here that are marked. This is for efficient 5-man, so each person has their own color-coded chest, and you avoid thieving the chest of one of your friends. And there's not much more to add. Lockpick is nice here, and really that's about it. The only thing I'd add is when you finish dumping, try to go ahead and right away and set up your inventory setup. So grab everything you need for the final floor, the pickaxe, the salve. If you're Veni bowing, you want to bring that, or chins. If you have a ZGS, you want to get that too. If you have a horn, you want to bring that too. And then send right away Vespula. So for Vespula, there's not much to add. You should always start with a shadow on long range in the ZCB on entry. This saves 1 tick, and you want to run straight to the tile in the middle, send your ZCB, and then mage with your redemption and augury as a quick prayers. There's not much more to add here. You just gotta be very careful. If your prayer drops, you can definitely die. I've died a lot at Vespula, and the only thing to note is the person who telegrabs loots the pots, and that's about it. Alright, so this is one of the hardest rooms to coordinate, but once it's done properly, it's actually extremely satisfying. So I'm going to show all 3 roles one at a time. So let's start off with the crosser. So the crosser goes straight away, crosses as you can guess, and if the tagger tags within 2 ticks the ranger and you cross immediately after, you're safe. You then loot the crystal, immediately drop it, and wait 2 ticks before recrossing, and that's literally it. That job is extremely easy. Now the second role, which is a tagger, you send a Veni bow on the ranger, and then if your crosser crosses within 2 ticks and you want to be efficient, you can also send the Veni bow on the majors like this, and this way your crosser takes absolutely no damage, and once you see the crystal is used on the wall, you can right away go into the next room. Now the telegrabber is honestly my favorite role here. You basically run straight to this tile next to the rope. As soon as you see the crystal on the floor, you grab it, telegrab it, and then use it on the wall right away. Now note, you should be rushing here as fast as possible. You should be avoiding the chest after Vespula. You can touch it and go straight into it, and that's fine. And you could also avoid the final chest here before Guardians to save some time. Alright, this is Guardians. There's not much to say. It's a 5-tick cycle with your pickaxe. Just click the boss, pray melee, pray piety. And if you want to be slightly more efficient, you can avoid overkill DPS. So you basically just let one player finish off the Guardians when it's very low health. And that's literally it. There's not much more to say here. It's Guardians. Alright, so Vasa is one of the fun rooms. So the lure would basically go straight into Vasa, tick perfectly on the North Guardian spot, like so. Spam click the door, run straight to this tile over here, and start equipping your range gear at the same time. Run back, and as soon as you see the fire spawn, you click on it, send 1 T-bow immediately, tick perfectly into your ZCB. This will save you 1 tick, and then T-bow it to Narnia. If the Vasa goes east, you get an extra T-bow hit. If it goes west, like in this case, you do not get an extra T-bow hit. So you can right away change gears and not try to greed that extra T-bow hit. You should be scything the crystal. If you don't have a scythe, a lance is fine. Fang is also good, it doesn't matter too much. And that's about it. When Vasa dies, you can also use telegrab to stand close to the exit and telegrab the bruise and the overload if you need it. And that's basically it. There's not much more to add here. It's very satisfying if you get the 1 down. It doesn't happen too often in trios, but in 5-mans it happens a lot more often. So for Mystics, there's not much more to add, just honestly click the boss. If you have Search Potions, I would recommend sending a ZCB here when the Mystic is full health, so on a brand new fresh Mystics. You should also avoid the ZCB upon entry because you may lose a tick due to the range deficit compared to a T-bow. And that's about it. Make sure you have your salve equipped. That's it. Alright, so for Mutadile, let's start off with the entry. So you want to do a tick perfect entry where you stall a tick. So I usually go straight to this tile here, hold control, spam click the door, and as soon as you're able to cross, you will walk 2 tiles, which stalls exactly 1 tick. And this way you do the 10th skip. So you see the 10th spawn, but we were able to cross it before. Now this only assumes that your team does not rag it by standing too much south on the Vasa room. So you send a ZCB on entry if you're not ZGSing, and the Entangler will entangle Muta between 50 and 55% health. As soon as it dies, you go straight to this tile over here next to Muta, and you T-bow twice into a ZGS. Now, if one of your players has space, I would definitely recommend bringing a horn as a utility item, which I forgot to mention earlier. But you send 2 T-bows into a ZGS, and if you horn, your horn is guaranteed to hit the ZGS. So one player can stand a little bit further away in order to ensure that you get the spec in. You can literally just do a one-way for the ZGS without piety because the horn guarantees a spec. Loot your pots and go straight to the next room, and that's about it. Now this is an example of me ZGSing. You can see West runs 3 tiles away. I do 2 T-bows, I wait for the horn animation, and then I just send my ZGS, and that's about it. The guaranteed spec is very nice because you have a 65% chance of landing a spec with max gear and ZGS, so removing the RNG is very nice here. Alright, now let's discuss the Olm Fight. So as soon as you enter the Olm Fight, you should know exactly what gear to take from your chest, and you should always use a chest on the bottom floor here because it's slightly faster. In your head, you should know exactly what you have in your chest, exactly what you have to withdraw and deposit. You want to send off and send a hammer right away on the melee hand for both P1 and P2, and then shadow the mage hand. For P2, you can start off with a hammer, run straight on the other side, and then send the shadow. If you do this tick perfectly and you do not splash, the head will turn automatically, insta-setting you for mage skipping. As soon as the mage hand dies, and you should notice by it being marked blue, go straight to the melee hand. Now you want to send at least 2 Eldermaw specs before going for BGS for potential. Optionally, if you want to go for consistency, which is what I usually do, you can send 3 hammers on Olm hand before going for a BGS. This is really just up to you depending on if you want to go for speeds or just consistency in general. So for P3, you want to let the hammers hit if you're the BGSer, and then go straight for a BGS afterwards. Now you'll notice that as soon as the crystal spawns, we right away cross. So you see the crystal spawns here, we cross and start mage skipping. And this way, it allows you to reduce the number of the specials you get, so it reduces the chances you get bad RNG as well. Now, if you're the person running head and you notice that the melee hand is not getting enough DPS compared to the mage hand, you can do this right here, which I guess we can call the rat fly for memes, but I'm just kidding. But you can basically just get some scythe hits in between the head turns to help DPS the melee hand, to help out your meleeer, and that's basically it for this part. Now, as you should know, you should be killing both hands around at the same time. As soon as both hands die, you can go ahead and go for T-bow hits, send a ZCB. If you have a Ralos, you should definitely send a spec because it lowers the defense, which helps for the accuracy of your T-bow. And that's basically it. There's also a method called the jam method where you basically just rag Olm head to always stay in the center. That is more advanced for like 5-mans and stuff, but for trios I like turning the head because that way you can just keep tanking every 2 hits. You can also tick hits if you need to, and that's basically just it. There's not much more to say here. T-bow is very strong here, especially in Chambers challenge mode. You can hit massive numbers on Olm head, and as soon as you get porters, you should always try to stand on them. Reduces the heals. It's very worth the effort, and that's basically it. So this is a sub 20 example right here, and not much more to say. That's it. We're gonna go over afterwards to some other tips and tricks. So this here is some time saves that I calculated on items you're worth bringing. The Slayer helmet for a Shaman task is good. It gives you a 4-second time save, and currently with max range, the Missouri helm does not give you a max hit, so it's worth doing this. However, I have an uncharged quiver, so that for me it doesn't matter, but let's just ignore that portion. Now I also want to touch on the Iron Man friendly max efficiency trio setup. So this is what I discussed earlier about the prepper only self-prepping and the other 2 no-preppers share the loot potions. This is more advanced. I've done a few times this raid setup, like around 200 times maybe. It's definitely faster, but there's less room for mistakes, and you're basically on like permanent life support the entire raid. I also have a Discord invitation for Sally's Iron Man friendly Discord. He is trying to redo that Discord very shortly, so definitely worth joining if you're looking to learn more with some text guides in there as well. Alright, so now we can go about some of the 5-man comparisons to trios. It's the same with trios, there's a few different differences, so you can split the roles a little bit more. So for example, 2 people will BGS and you can share the other roles. There's also a suicide prep tech, which basically means you rush Vanguards as a prepper, and you suicided Vanguards when it's about to die, and then you prep your potions, and then you relog by logging out, logging back into the game, and this way you spawn right after TightRope at Guardians. Now this only works if you're a main. There's a way to work around this for Irons, but it's very advanced. I don't feel like talking about it. The other thing is the Tekton lure. There's a way to lure a little bit faster, as you can see here. Basically, you rush straight to this tile, go to the second tile over here, and then as soon as Tekton gets to, you send your BGS. Now, your other players should bring some Dragon Claws, so you can send 1 hammer each, and then Dragon Claw spec when it's 0 defense. This is basically saves a couple seconds at Tekton, and it's only really worth for 5-mans, to be honest with you. Now, there's a lot of differences between Iron Man mechanics, and basically, to sum up, Iron Man can loot all potions on the floor regardless, including seeds. This is very different compared to before, where the Iron Man had to MVP the boss. Iron Man cannot use a shared chest, but we can also, however, deposit items in the shared chest, which makes Iron Man great for prep slave role, and also ferrying potions, which I haven't touched on, but basically, if you're raiding with a bunch of mains as an Iron, you can ferry the potions from Tekton by looting all 4 items and dropping them next to the Ice Demon chest. This way the mains can bring more items in their inventory and not have to worry about looting an overload or an enhance at Tekton. And honestly, as a main, you should always let the Iron Man loot all the potions on the floor and to drop them towards you. Now, there's a lot of differences here, a lot of variations. You can also share the floor pots. You can also let the Iron loot everything and drop you what he doesn't need. And this is much like a case-by-case basis where you have to get used to the procedure. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this guide, and I hope it taught you a lot about Chambers of Xeric challenge modes. Now, there's so much to learn about Chambers. It's such a fun raid, and the better you get at it, the faster you can complete them, the more satisfying it becomes. There's so many metas that are being discovered every day, like the Vasa tech is very recent, which is super surprising, and we're also getting new gear very soon from the 12 boss, like the book glue, and also an upgrade to the Tormented Bracelet. Now, all of this will help you push your CM completion times much faster. However, the general meta will not shift too much. There's also thralls you can use now with the Arceus spellbook. You can use Amberlight at Ice Demon as of recently as well, and it's just so much fun how this raid is evolving. And remember that this raid is not hard per se. One of my friends, Sally, once told me it's a very procedural raid, which is very different compared to the other 2 raids we have in the game currently. And I hope you enjoyed. Please leave a like. This video took a lot of hours to do. I will put in the description the tiles. I'll put in the description my Vangs Rush summary written guide. I'm also going to put an invite to Sally's Discord in the description. And that's it. Peace out. Take care.